Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week, the regularly scheduled episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I know last week I did something a little bit wild and crazy and put that bonus edition out there, and I hope you don't mind. It was very different format wise than what you're used to. And while normally I'm here to chat and talk and hopefully make everyone think just a little bit or see things in perhaps a new way or a different way or anything along those lines. That bonus edition was definitely really kind of me practicing what I preached. I mean, stepping out of a comfort zone and sharing something very intimate with all of you out there wherever you are. So it was quite the step forward for me and out of my usual comfort zone. So I hope that you didn't mind that I shared that bonus edition. And if you did, oh well, I did it anyways, and I am more empowered for having done that. So speaking of empowering, there is it seems to be kind of a common thing that vanilla people don't understand how BDSM or DS or any of their combination thereof, or even just plain being kinky or exploring your kinks, if that's your jam, empowers people. Like it's a some sort of mystery. Like somehow, if you are submissive and you are exploring the DS lifestyle, that it is somehow less than empowering. And the same goes for dominance. When a dominant explores BDSM, and there are people who can think that it is not an empowering experience for them. And contrary to those opinions, I obviously disagree, and I believe exploration of the lifestyle is actually very empowering, no matter what side of the slash you're on. So, with empowerment as a theme, this week will be the first in a two-part series, which means next week will be the follow-on, and I want to talk about empowerment in the lifestyle. This week, we're going to talk about how submission or submissives can find empowerment through their role in the lifestyle. And with that in mind, that means next week will be dominance. And if you're a switch, I guess both weeks can apply to you. And hopefully, my plan is that no matter what side of the slash you're on, that you can learn about how the lifestyle empowers somebody on the other side of the slash, which hopefully will make you either a better submissive or a better dominant or a better switch or just a better all around kinky individual. Got a little tongue tied there. It's been a long day, and yeah. So anyway, first of all, let's take on some of the misconceptions about submissives. I don't think any of these are probably going to blow your socks off, or you're going to be surprised. But these are just common misconceptions that are out there about submissives. First of all, that submissives they lack decision making ability, that they, struggle to make a decision, deciding whether they want Chinese or pizza for dinner if they don't have a dominant to tell them will be overwhelming. Newsflash, I'm a dominant, and sometimes deciding between Chinese food and pizza can be overwhelming for me. It's just sometimes we all have a day where something like that can be overwhelming. But the myth is that submissives just they can't make decisions because they are so wishy-washy or they lack agency. They can't negotiate, and they can't even really help shape a relationship that they're going to build. They just do whatever they're told. Of course, the next one is the big one. Submissives are always weak and passive, which is so not the case. I I just have to say, every submissive that I have gotten to know in my life, and in my real life, since I was in college till now, every submissive I have met has been a strong, capable person, and in various aspects of their life, they all have been very dominant. So this crapola that submissives are weak and passive, it's just it's just blah, but it's out there all the time, and it's sort of always hounding. And I think That's one of the biggest reasons that keeps people from exploring submission is because they fear being seen as weak. And that's not the case, but that's one of the myths. The other one is consent is absent. If you are submissive, since you're weak and you're passive, you don't get consent is not something that you get to be part of. You just have to sort of unfortunately, take whatever the Dom is giving, if that makes sense, that they don't get to consent, and everything in the lifestyle revolves around consent. If you don't have consent, it is not BDSM. But out there, there's still that myth that submissives do not have consent. Another one is that submissives lack independence, and this is especially true when they're in a relationship. They don't have independence. They are entirely dependent on their dominant partners. And it can even go so far as they're entirely dependent on their dominant partners to pay bills, to make their car payment, that they have ceded so much control to their dominant that they have absolutely no independence. And we all know that is definitely not the case. Ah, anyway, on a quick side note, perhaps Santa will bring me this year a new microphone for podcasting that has a cough button because I just had to take a second there and cough because it has turned a little cold and the heat is on, and yeah, just a little itchy, scratchy throat. And so I wish I had a cough button or a way to mark that point in the podcast so I could go back and edit out the hacking. I normally don't edit things, but I don't think any of you want to hear me cough. So that I do edit. Um, Getting back into it, another myth about submissives is that submissives are all the same. It doesn't matter whether they're male, female, they're transgender, whether they're gay, they're straight, they're all the same. That every submissive is just the same. And so you see, people out there that push uniform rules where, submissives, have like 200 rules for all submissives. And it's just so incorrect. Every person is unique. Everyone is unique, whether they're dominant, submissive, switch, or vanilla bean, or vanilla extract. If you're somewhere, kinky into fetishes, but you're not really, anyways. But everybody's unique, and the same is true with submission and submissives. Everyone is unique. Also, going along with that whole consent thing that doesn't exist, that submissives get no say in their limits. The dominant does what they want, and a submissive says, "Yes, please," and that's crap. Another thing is that there's a myth that in a DS relationship, submissives do not find emotional fulfillment. Um, and that's, once again, so not the case. But it's a myth. It is out there that somehow, because a person is submissive, they do not develop a deep emotional connection to their dominant. That it's, I don't know, DS relationships are very superficial, I guess it would be. And finally, in the myth front, we have that DS relationships are unequal power-wise. The dominant has the power, and the submissive, being submissive, kneels down to the almighty and powerful dominant. And that is not the case. That is kind of the myth that inspired me. I don't know if any of you have seen some of my blog posts or writings, but I always, whenever I write DS, the D is capitalized, and of course we have the all powerful slash, and the S is also capitalized, where the canons of BDSM say that the D is capitalized and the S is in lowercase to signal the DS power exchange. With the big D and the small s, and I always capitalize both, and it's because in my view there's a partnership, and it's an equal partnership. You can't have a big D without having the big S. Submissive, they're working hand in hand. So the myth is that DS relationships are unequal. So when you look at all these myths, you can understand where people feel that there is no empowerment in submission. So, first of all, when a submissive finds their dominant, Um, whether or not they have a big D or not, that is all up to them and what they like. But in a DS relationship, a submissive takes is empowered when they're dominant. Of course, this is all done consensually. Consensually leads them and takes certain things off their plate, whether it's I'll decide our meal plan for the week, or I know that you're working to be healthier, so I'm going to hold you accountable of going to the gym every other day. Various things like that. The things that dominants do on a daily basis to empower their submissive by removing decisions or options from their submissive's life. The submissive feels empowered because they no longer have to be burdened with it. They just know that, okay, this is going to happen. This choice I have ceded to my dominant and they've taken care of it, and here's what I'm going to do. And through that process, it actually is very empowering. But that process doesn't happen because the submissive is weak or doesn't have a voice. Because it's all done consensually, that means there's been communication. The submissive has engaged with their dominant, the dominant has engaged with the submissive, and lo and behold, we have a collaborative process that has come to light that has created this framework, the structure of the relationship. So it's an empowering process because it takes the voices of the dominant and the submissive together to craft the relationship. Um, it takes active communication. The submissive actively communicates what they need, what they want, where their boundaries are, where their limits are, and they stand firm with those. They're not wishy-washy when it comes to that. They are very firm. So the submissive is taking part in the decision making. The dominant isn't thumping their chest and saying, "You shall do this." It is a discussion, and the submissive is agreeing. The dominant is listening, tweaking. Submissives, they self advocate. Uh, while a dominant, for example, may be in charge of holding up the accountability side of the relationship, when it comes to setting the goals that the submissive is going to be held accountable to, those are very much part of the collaborative process. The submissive has a voice. They're not just dictated from dominant down. The submissive always has the power to say no. So they are active contributors. They're part of the decision-making process. Even if it's playtime and a dominant says, "Hey, let's role play. I'll be the pizza delivery driver, and you're the lonely housewife." And even things like that, submissives are part of the decision-making, even when it comes to play. It's still that negotiation. The dynamic, the rules, the boundaries, they're all set. And the other thing too about DS relationships, it's not all about what the dominant wants, contrary to the myth. Um, a dominant who takes care of their submissive's, desires is going to drive the submissive to want to do more for them. So a submissive is going to be in a relationship, be encouraged to share their desires, their wants, the things that they need, so the dominant can meet them and inspire their submissive and inspire submission. Also, submissives have the right and always should have the right to initiate conversation. For me, it's a huge red flag if you ever run into a dominant who insists that their submissive cannot, for example, start a conversation with them when they're having an issue with something. If a submissive sees something that's wrong or perhaps not right or something that can be done better or something they need in a relationship, submissives are actually empowered to speak up and talk about that. And when you do run across the supposed dominant who doesn't believe in that, that's a red flag that that person is either undereducated about the lifestyle or a person to completely steer clear of because they're using the lifestyle to take advantage. So when we have the partnership, not only do we have the submissive with their voice speaking up, just like every relationship, it's going to change over time. Long-term relationships do happen, are common in DS, believe it or not. I know on the internet it seems like we have a somebody done somebody wrong song being sung, once a day somewhere in our on our Kingtastic feeds. But long-term DS relationships happen all the time, are in progress right now as we speak. And that's because the partners are committed to mutual growth. And to do that, I mean, it's empowering when you have a partner that wants to work with you to see you grow. And as you grow, you're working on growth together. So you're growing together. And the more dominant helps you grow, the more the submissive helps the dominant grow. And it's very symbiotic. You are growing together. The submissive is being encouraged to blossom and to be their own person, to do new things. All the while, this is inspiring the submissive to help the dominant do the same thing. And you're feeding each other, you're feeding the relationship. And this continues, and the dynamic obviously is going to evolve over time. And because you're feeding each other, your dynamic as it's evolving over the time, you are adjusting, changing things. And all of that happens not because the dominant says so, but because the submissive has been empowered and is a part of the whole process in building this wonderful growing dynamic. And as you build that dynamic, as you're together longer, you become more trusting in your partner. Your partner trusts you more. That builds intimacy, which makes things stronger and thus, obviously, more empowering. Now, I know I've talked quite a little bit there about how empowerment works for a submissive in a relationship. And I know that listening out there are submissives who are unpartnered. And they're like, hey, that's great. All those things, that's what I want someday. But I don't have somebody right now. So is DS, empowering for me as an unpartnered submissive? And actually, the answer is yes, of course it is. Wouldn't be sitting here talking to you for 17 minutes if it wasn't the case. Uh, First of all, when anybody decides to go down the BDSM rabbit hole, I don't know. I mean, I still remember my first trip down the rabbit hole and how like overwhelming, inspiring, arousing, all those things that happen the first time you venture down the rabbit hole. And I guess I should also throw in there a bit of wow, this is really good, but at the same time it's like, wow, this really is this really me? Is something wrong with me? So anyways, when we first go down that rabbit hole of conflicting emotions, some very good, some very bad, and we're trying to figure it all out, that independence, because it's an independence thing, because we're going against society's norms. We're exploring something that, as enlightened as today's world is, it's still something that says you shouldn't like this. This is kinky, and by kinky we don't mean doggy style. This is really, this might even be taboo. Considering your background. I came from a small town. I went to church every Sunday. Was a good kid, and so yeah, it was like very much like, ooh, I like this. This really connects with me, but this goes against everything I've been taught. And it's empowering when you embrace your independence and you start down that rabbit hole. You start exploring your kinks and maybe even setting some goals. Even though you're unpartnered, you can set some goals like, oh, I want to finish Dossie Easton's new topping book. I want to finish that by the end of the month. All those sorts of little things you can do, and they're very empowering. Another thing that is empowering is community. And I know I said community, so you're probably going to expect Edward to start talking about the in-person community and how he advocates for going out and attending munches and maybe even going to a play party. And no, that's not what I'm going to say. It's what I normally say. But when I say in community here, I'm saying build your own community. Think of the DS lifestyle community, whether it's online or in person, whatever your jam is, as a Build-A-Bear workshop. You can pick who wants you want to have as part of your Inky community. Go out, build some friendships, get to know other submissives. I will say this: if you are new, you are, in that going down the rabbit hole stage, and you believe that you are a dominant, seek out dominant acquaintances. Don't start befriending all the submissives that you run into. Go out and work on building acquaintances, friendships with those on the same side of the slash as you are. And the same for submissives. It can be very easy as we start going down that rabbit hole to want to talk to, and there's nothing wrong with it, engage with people on the other side of the slash. It's very appealing. But when you're very new, focus on building connections with the people on the same side of the slash as you, because you can learn from them what they have experienced. And since they're on the same side of the slash, there's going to be no translation. Yeah, makes me think one of my favorite movies is Lost in Translation. So there's nothing lost in translation when, say, a submissive is telling a dominant a story that's happened to them. When you have, which can, that can be impactful, but it's more impactful for everyone to build acquaintances and friendships with those on the same side of the slash. I'm not saying they have to be your BFFs or that you need to hang out every third Saturday, but build some friendships on the same side of the slash as you are. It will um, help you grow in the lifestyle, and additionally, you can learn from some of the mistakes they've made. And when you're experiencing a new dilemma or a new person has said something that's thrown you, you can go to your collection of friends, your community that you've built at your Build-A-Bear Kinky Workshop, and ask for their advice. And when we build new friendships or we build just even acquaintances, guess what? That's empowering. Another thing that even though you're single and in the lifestyle, uh, we talk so often about negotiation, consent, and boundaries. And as you learn more and more about that in the DS realm, the things that we learn there, they translate to our real lives. As you kind of learn, maybe even practice having a boundary or a limit discussion with a prospective dominant, that same kind of caring discussion that has to happen can help you have a discussion about limits, say, with your employer. Your employer might be asking you to do too much, or they might be encroaching on a personal limit, saying, we need you to work Sundays, and Sundays you can't. Those types of boundaries, negotiations, those conversations carry over into our vanilla world and actually make us better communicators in our vanilla lives. So that in itself empowers us. Another wonderful thing is you learn how to advocate for yourself, obviously. Talking about the discussions with boundaries and limits. But even when you're interacting with a prospective dominant, because of the experiences you've had, you're able to better advocate for yourself and say, kind of like Meatloaf, I'll do this for love, but I'm not doing that. So it makes discussing our personal needs easier, which once again makes us more empowered. Another thing is that the challenges we face in the DS lifestyle, whether you're single or partnered, they are challenges that when we overcome them or get through them, not every challenge is, unfortunately, is a we overcome. Some are just challenges that we survive. But those challenges make us stronger. They teach us lessons about self-care. Um, they also sometimes teach us lessons about, you know, setting realistic expectations. So all of those lessons that we learn, they empower us. So there's so much goodness there in empowering things about the lifestyle for submissives, whether you have a loving partner or partners, or whether you're unpartnered and exploring. There's so much there that can empower you. Now, since we just talked about unpartnered submissives, let's look at just a few of the characteristics that if you are a unpartnered submissive and you are looking for a dominant that will be an empowering partner rather than a twat waffle. That's one of my favorite words, by the way, twat waffle. So if you are looking for an empowering dominant rather than twat waffle dominant, um, there are a few things that I believe you should have like on your little checklist of traits that says this person might be the empowering person that you've been seeking. First of all, communication skills. And communication skills, I'm not talking about they majored in communication at college and or that they present in front of hundreds of people every day. Those types of communicate. Everybody communicates differently. So first of all, your communication with them has to click. I have met some amazing people, and I know I've had some dates where I've gone on, and at the end of the day, it's like they're amazing, but we just don't communicate well together. So communication, first of all, is you have to click between two people, and then on top of that, you should look for somebody who is an active listener. Um, Speaking of that, that reminds me of a story. It was in BC times, just before COVID. That's what BC now stands for me, is before COVID. Um, I met this amazing submissive. It was a coffee date, and we had a great time. We talked, and when we got done, and we talked the next day, and what did you think? And they said to me, "You didn't try to dominate the whole conversation." I'm like, No, I that's not me." And they're like most dominants that I've met. They were obviously new to the lifestyle, and they had just run into people that used kind of dominance to try and run the table. And they were shocked to find that I was an active listener and that I asked questions and I offered thoughts and feedback that were appropriate to what we were talking about. I just didn't bulldoze through the conversation. So you want to have an active listener. And the dominant should also be able to clearly express themselves when it comes to their expectations and desires. Should those communications get to the point where you're going to want to start to talk about, what would a DS relationship between us look like? What are some of your expectations? What are your preferences? And they should be able to articulate them clearly and be able to answer questions you have so that you can understand what they're looking for and how that fits what you're looking for. Obviously, you're going to look for somebody who is respectful of your limits and boundaries. They're flexible with negotiation, meaning when it comes to negotiating anything from what movie we're going to see Saturday night to what kinktastic things we are going to do to each other after the movie Saturday night, that they approach negotiation as just that. It's a negotiation. It's not an intimidation or it's not a bullying to get their way. They actually want to share what they're looking for, respect your boundaries and limits, and they also want to include things that you're looking for. So it's a win-win-win situation rather than dominant gets just what they want. Um, and of course, since I need to say it anyways, you probably know what's coming. They recognize, respect, consent. So that is also part of it. They are going to show empathy. They're going to have an emotional intelligence. Once again, we could talk about what all those things mean, but really, it is how they click with you. Obviously, you want somebody who's empathetic, who is going to provide aftercare and emotional support, and not just after play, but are going to be there to provide emotional support. Because let's face it, there are days if when we're partnered, we all need emotional support. Even dominants need it. Contrary to what some of the twat waffles out there say, they are also transparent as far as what they want. They're able to express their emotions. They're able over time to be vulnerable. Please don't expect people to just be vulnerable because you are. That is a personal pet peeve of mine. Um, if somebody is vulnerable with me, um, I am humbled and I am honored that they are sharing it with me. But just because they've shared a vulnerability with me doesn't mean it's not like quid pro quo. Just because you shared one doesn't mean now that I have to share one. Um, for me, it takes time to get there, and it's something that a prospective partner will actually have to kind of work on. It's who I am. I've always been that way, but they can be and they will be emotionally transparent. It just depending on the person. In my case, it takes a little time and it takes a little effort to get there, but I think I'm worth it. Anyway, another thing that a dominant is going to do is they are going to encourage their submissive um, to be self-expressive. They're going to want to have their submissive come to them and say, "Hey, I would like." So when you're looking for that prospective dominant, you're going to want somebody that encourages you to express yourself, that works to create a safe place where you both can express yourself without fear of judgment, and you can share fantasies and desires and all of those wonderful things without fearing of being judged negatively. They are also going to support your personal growth. They are going to want to be your partner, not just your dominant. They're going to want to be your partner. Um, and finally, something that I like and I suggest is look for somebody that's going to recognize and celebrate your achievements in life. And they are going to want to use the structure in a relationship that typically supports positivity and is more reinforcing of positive behavior than punishment. Now, I realize some people are attracted to strict punishment type setups, and if that's your jam, that's your jam. I just think that positivity creates stronger bonds, and that's my opinion. And since it's my podcast, I will share my opinion. Another thing, and the final thing to look for in a empowering dominant is a dominant that is going to encourage growth, not only as a person, but in the lifestyle, and is going to want to do that together. Because as you grow, they're going to want to find ways and want you to help them find ways and build a partnership that continuously grows together. Because, well, at least now that I'm over 50, can look around and I can see some of my friends from college who got married not long after college and were very happy, for 20 years. And now unfortunately, they, their relationships have grown apart. So you're going to want to find somebody that's going to be willing and able and want to grow with you, adapt with you, and work on continuously growing together so you don't find yourself 20 years down the road going, who the heck is this person? How did we get here? So that is what I have on empowerment from the submissive side. Now, next week, we will get into ways that dominants are empowered by the lifestyle. And of course, we will get into how submissives can empower their dominants. So we have that to look forward to next week. But now that that's all over, I do want to share with you I have launched a new little project. I was thinking last week, and I was flitting around Instagram rather than listening to a conference call. I know, bad employee, somebody pull out the ruler and spank my hands. But I was flitting around Instagram, and it seems like there are a zillion post every day that are motivational. Like, forget yesterday and take on today and be the person you want to be today and all those motivational sayings from philosophers to, country singers. They're all floating around, they're all out there, and I got thinking, how come there isn't like something motivational out there for BDSM every day? I haven't found it. I'm not saying it's not out there. I didn't find it. I looked around and I didn't find it. And I'm like, that stinks. There's nothing here. So that went from into the next conference call, my brain thinking that stinks, to, well, if it's not out there, why don't I do it? So I have done it. I have a new project. It's a new Instagram. It is called The Lightkeeper's Reflections. And once a day, it has one post in the morning, bright and early New York City time, that is designed just to be a little positive positivity about either BDSM or DS or just being kinky in general. Just a positive, motivating, maybe not motivating, but a positive beacon, if you will, that happens every day. So if you are on Instagram, please head over to the Lightkeepers Reflections. Check it out. There's obviously not a whole ton of posts to go through because it's a new thing, but every day there will be a new post there, shiny and new every day for you to review, and hopefully just give you a little positivity about the lifestyle, a little reflective thought, and I hope that you will enjoy it and follow it, and I look forward to your feedback on it. Also, if you haven't, my main Instagram account is Chatting with the Lightkeeper. That's pretty much where I am across the board on social media. I think if you Googled social chatting with the lightkeeper, on whatever social media platform, you're going to find me. So I would welcome anyone who wants to follow me there. And finally, please don't forget to click follow on this podcast. So no matter where you're listening, scroll down, hit the follow button. That way, every time a new episode comes out, which is Tuesday morning, you will be notified and it'll be right there waiting for you to listen. So I appreciate you giving me a listen today. I hope you found this empowering, and I will chat with you next week.